Computer. Right, so we're recording now. I'll put it into full screen mode in a second. So I've knocked up two presentations. I had them, I've just adapted them.
Yeah.
So my thoughts tonight would do chapter 1 and 2. And
Okay.
then we'd have another session and do chapter 3 and 4.
That'd be great. Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this, Dave. I'm very grateful.
No, it's no problem. And I've got Jason Donner, who used to be at
Thought you were going to say Jason Donovan then.
yeah. He was actually, he didn't quite make it to the hotel place we went to. He was at Park Lane, and then he was in between jobs. But he's sort of just finished his level 5 and hitting level 6.
Right.
So I'm recording it for him as well. Okay. So let's have a look at this. So just before we start, there is a book, but don't go near it, from Gatona. Let me just hold the camera up here somewhere. Look, can you see it?
Wow.
Wow, it's an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And he does another book there, which similar, but they're an awful read. I bought them and I've looked at them and very difficult. So I wouldn't buy them. The only extra reading that they're saying is one here from Monska,
Right.
Purchasing and Supply Management. That's a nice book, but having said that, it's still, says me losing my book, it's still not, the Purchasing and Supply Manager by License and Farrington is still the far better book.
Right.
You know, the classic one. I don't know if you ever bought that, where it's...
I think I've got it.
Yeah, it's still by far the better book. And I don't think you really need to, I can't find my copy, it's in there somewhere. But, you know, some people like books. I mean, I've got the Monska book, or however you pronounce it, on PDF. If you so wished, I could send you a PDF, and you could always dip into that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
PDFs are quite good, obviously, because they're searchable and you can go for your topic.
Yeah.
So I'll send you that. It's probably the second best book that I use is the Monska book.
Yeah.
For once. So they're the textbooks. Right, let me go into. I haven't got my contacts in, so bear with me. Slideshow from third slide. I'm having to cut down wearing them as much because I was getting your veins start sort of doing strange things in your eyes, but never mind.
Right.
Okay, so you'll recognise the picture.
Yeah.
Yes. So I've done quite well probably through private work because people want tuition.
Yeah.
So chapter 1 is pretty general. Levels of strategy, which you did in PD2.
Yeah.
Business level, corporate strategy, all
corporate
that.
Business.
Competitive advantage, I think we did that in AD4 or something. Outsourcing. But there's a different outsourcing matrix on this syllabus to what you did. You did Carter's for many years.
Right.
They've sort of replaced Carter with someone called Barnes. Although you can't be wrong if you used Carter. Stifled. You'll recognise your old favourite, and you can see.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've
got demographic in there now.
Yeah, that's the one, and that's the only difference.
Yeah.
Bit of change management, and then the quite difficult thing, strategic alignment. But we'll look at that. I've penciled in there when the exam questions were set. There was a July one there for 1.1, July there, November, September. So they have been around the learning outcomes fairly well, really.
Right.
So I don't think I've got red hot tips there, but we'll see. So this is levels of strategy, supply chain management, profitability, and risks, which again you've done.
Yeah.
For. So what is strategy? Long-term direction, competitive advantage. Yeah. So possibly a definition from your old PD2 there.
Yeah.
And of course, strategy can be described in the 5 Ps.
Yeah.
Be a plan, a ploy, or a combination of all them things.
Yeah.
And that's the 5 Ps one: ploy, pattern, position. This is on your syllabus, levels of strategy.
Yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't apply to little companies. So big companies, there's
Yeah.
corporate strategy.
I
Then
think that's where I've always struggled a bit, because with
yeah,
being a small company.
yeah,
Yeah.
it isn't easy. You've got to put yourself, unfortunately, into the sort of Ford Motor Company and sort of Tesco type, or someone bigger, haven't you, who would have
Yeah.
different divisions.
Yeah.
I mean, I did work for one multinational when I worked at Terry's, and that was an eye opener.
Yeah.
They were part of United Biscuits. So we've got the head office, if you like, corporate strategy, and they decide what sort of companies they want in their organisation, when to sell, when to buy businesses. And then the individual businesses have to compete in their market. So
Yeah.
they have their own competitive advantage, if you like, that they're trying to compete with. And then
Yeah.
we've got purchasing, marketing at operational function who support business strategy, who in turn support corporate strategy. So we've
Yeah.
got the usual levels. So corporate's higher level. It's about corporate growth. What parts of the world shall we be in? How big will the company be? Is it going to be multi-divisional, regional, everything about it? And then the individual businesses, how are you going to basically compete?
Yeah.
What markets you're going to be in? And functional strategies, yeah, exactly what it is. It's every function in the business supporting the business strategy. So that's pretty straightforward. And you've got one there showing that they should all line up: corporate, business, supply chain strategy. And we've got some KPIs there that link to the strategy.
Right.
Business strategy constitutes direction of supply chain, yeah. So definition there. So definitions are always useful, but they aren't going to get you 25 marks, but they're always useful to have.
Yeah.
So the supply chain strategy is not a linear derivative of business strategy. Most companies develop supply chain strategy after the business strategy has been defined. While this approach could deliver value, it doesn't support supply chain models options, which could sniff. So it's trying to say it should be integrated in there, not done afterwards, which is pretty common sense, isn't it? Right. When we're talking about strategy, companies might decide what sort of companies they want to keep in their group. And the study guide throws in the Boston Matrix here, which has nothing to do with purchasing, but is to do with assets and resources of a company.
Right.
So you might have a product that's a cash cow.
Yeah.
At university or college, that would be maybe A-level business studies.
Yeah.
Problem childs could be old NVQ courses that are dying off or something.
Yeah.
Stars can be new products and dogs. Fairly self-evident, but the theory is you need a balanced portfolio.
Yeah.
You need at least one cash cow so that you've got money to develop the stars. I don't think we call them problem children anymore, do we? They got rid of that because it's not PC. It's there's a this is from the study guide as well. Oh grief, there is another name for it, but you get the basic idea.
Yeah.
You've done the BCG before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's one way of looking at your portfolio is, are we in a market that's growing and have we high market share? But it's very simplistic, is that matrix. A more sophisticated one from PD2 is the McKinsey matrix, which looks at 9 boxes.
Yeah.
And this is more your competitive position versus how attractive the industry is. These matrix aren't named on this syllabus. They're named on the other one, L6M2. So they can't ask you about these. They would only be part of a general answer.
Yeah. Okay.
So I wouldn't worry too much. So there is a McKinsey matrix, which is a bit more realistic, and it gives you a few more options. And obviously, if you've got a star product, you're trying to protect your position. So there's different strategies there. Diversified companies. Very high diversified, there's no common links. Well, that's pretty common sense, isn't it? Low diversity, single business. I'm not sure what that's telling us. It's from the study guide. And then we've got obviously the very, very, very important, how do we get competitive advantage?
Yeah.
And of course, there are only two sources of competitive advantage according to Porter. And
Yeah.
it's going to work. It would if I got the right pen. Oh, there is it going to, yeah. Cost and differentiation. Now, people sometimes get muddled and think there are 4 sources of competitive advantage, but there are 4 generic strategies that will give you competitive advantage. So you just basically have got to be one of these. And supply chain can help. It can help you being cost leader, or it can help you be differentiated.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious what you'd have to do in your supply chain to support that. If you're going to be cost leader, well, that has big implications on your supply chain. But if you're going to differentiate, it depends how. Is it on innovation, quality, after service?
Yeah.
So I think, again, you've done quite a lot on that, but it's so important.
Yeah.
4 generic strategies, 2 sources of competitive advantage. And I think that's fairly straightforward. We need to understand internal and external strengths, weaknesses. How can supply chain management help? It can improve materials flow. It can make us more responsive. And we've got some attributes there of performance. They're actually from the SCORE model, SCOR benchmarking model. Now I'll look at that carefully. But that picture's somewhere in the study guide. Bit vague. How can it impact on profitability, supply chain management? Pretty obvious. Better procedures, better quality, better suppliers, keeps inventory low. You know, it's kitchen sink, isn't it, really? How can it help? Yeah, minimise risk, reduce lead times, reduce stocks. I think it's a bit kitchen sinky, is that. Supply chain risk, the 4 T's.
Yeah, 4 T's,
yeah. Impact, probability. So we'd assess risks and then we treat them. Sources of risk can come from inside or outside. Pretty general list there, isn't it? The study guide has this in from Manouche and Mensa, that risk can come from demand, supply, or operations. And then we've sort of got this very strange other things here, currency and security. So that's study guide stuff. The one that I prefer that we did in risk management was one from Christopher and Peck. It's very similar. If I put NISG, it means it's not in the SIP study guide.
Okay.
But on a written exam, that's not a problem because they're going to give you marks for any theory or anything that's appropriate and you use. So don't learn 2 though. You know, whichever you think sort of you prefer, stick to it. It's very similar: supply risk, process risk, demand risk, control risk, and then we've got the PESTELIA, the environmental risk, and they talk about them. And I know I've put that in my notes. So it just gives you a skeleton to answer if you had to discuss sources of risk in the supply chain. But either model would suffice. We need to have disaster recovery as part of risk management. So we'd have business continuity planning. How do we reduce risk? Well, supply chain management reduces risk. Visibility, information sharing, better management of contracts, systems integration. I don't think I could learn the list. It's just a very general benefits of doing supply chain management properly, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I'd look down that list there, go, yeah, it can map in, it can help us reduce risk, we can do with it. But it's just a matter of thinking, could I churn some of that out in an exam if it came up? How could effective SCM reduce risk? Ooh, well, okay, what is risk? How do we assess it? Then how can it help? And that's quite a big list. And that was pretty much 1.1. And then we get back onto competitive advantage. Now, the good thing is the syllabus gives you what they want you to talk about. Can come from cost, can come from better quality, quicker to market, or having a different product and service, it being differentiated.
Yeah.
These are the two porters, but they've actually listed them. The low cost is there and the differentiation is all them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though they're saying product and service differentiation separate, better quality and time to market is differentiated innovation.
Yeah.
Then this very strange thing, EPO, outsourcing, offshoring, which is easy, and quality improvement, they're pretty good. So how can we create sources of competitive advantage? Well, the study guide says cost, quality, time, product differentiation. So learn that list. The study guide goes down a very strange one. Looking for my pen there. For some reason, the idiot who wrote the study guide talks about comparative advantage, which is nothing to do with competitive advantage. It's to do with why one nation is better at other nations at producing certain goods.
Right.
And it's to do with the law of it's to do with international trade theory. So I don't know why the study guide has gone for 3 pages on that, because it's not relevant.
Right.
So I wouldn't learn it. I wouldn't go near it.
Okay.
Stick to the bullet, competitive advantage. So
Yeah.
obviously, companies can specialise. Some countries have absolute advantage, not in study guide. But in all the other units, we get Porter's Diamond, which is why some countries are better than other countries at producing certain products because of the local demand, infrastructure, government policy. Now that can affect supply chain management, because you might locate some of your sources of supply to benefit from certain regions of the world that have specialist manufacturers like Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go down comparative advantage and absolute. Porter's Diamond's not in the study guide, but it's a useful theory if you get time to come to it. So don't rush off and think I must learn that.
Right.
It's maybe nice to have later if you've got half an hour, just have a look at it.
Yeah.
And Porter's Diamond basically explains the competitive advantage of nations as opposed to companies. And that's, you think, okay, well, I could throw that in maybe but have a think on that. So competitive advantage, we've already looked at this diagram. Broad, narrow, nothing to say there. Porter's 5 forces. Now, they don't give us competitive advantage, but when you're deciding on your strategy and your positioning of your company, you need to understand the external environment.
Yeah.
Obviously, this would be a micro analysis of the industrial market.
Yeah.
And the macro analysis would be what? What would we do for the macro? So Porter's 5 forces is micro, or market, or industry, call it what you want. So 5
macro.
Forces,
Is that steeple?
It is, yeah. So we do the external steeple for macro, we do the micro with forces, and that together would give us the O's and T's, the opportunities and threats.
Right.
And then internally, we look at strengths and weaknesses, resources, capabilities, and all that stuff. So Porter's is pretty standard stuff, and it's reasonably well examined. You can only hope it comes up because it's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'm not confident we'll get that. Hill, who writes an operations management textbook, which is the sort of second favourite behind Slack, he talks about competitive advantage in terms of efficiency, quality, responsivity, and better innovation, which is fair enough. And you think, well, do I learn that? Well, maybe. It's just a little more than the standard Porter stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's another 4 sort of things you could throw in if the question was on competitive advantage. Or you could, in any question, be saying, and Hill suggests, superior quality can be a source. And if you had a mini case study where there was a quality issue, because 2 of your questions will have a mini case study. And and the other 2 are just going to be theory.
That's how it works with the new syllabus, is it?
Yeah. So they don't have 1 case study for all 4, and they don't have no case studies. They tend to have a little context, half a
Yeah.
page for one question, half a page for another question, and then two straight theory ones. And they vary the question every time, whether one has a mini case or two or three or four. So they seem
Right.
to go around. So we don't know whether it'll be question 3 or 4.
Right.
So that's how it works. So Hill's good, and that's pretty common sense. The value chain's obviously important because it links to supply chain. And the value chain, confusingly, is just in your company. And of
Yeah.
course, all the value chains together, if I connected them all, the books usually show these little fish, don't they, connecting in. He called that the value system, and we'd call it the supply chain. But hey, we've got primary activities and we've got the support activities.
Yeah.
I've just realised procurement's not there. Procurement should be one of the support activities.
Support activity, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not there, is it?
No.
It's how well these work together that add value. And obviously, procurement have a role to play, managing backwards, forwards, and coordinating all this stuff. So that's pretty straightforward. Cost advantage could be reduced setup costs, consistency of price. No, that's garbage, isn't it? How do we improve quality? Communication, increased customer expectation. No, that strictly isn't right heading, is it? Improving quality. They're challenges on quality. So the quality risk from communication is we need to extend capabilities and practices. Oh, it's a bit vague, isn't it, that? Increased customer expectations, impacts on quality, result in brand devaluation if something goes wrong, new lapse in quality. Interesting slide. Time to market, obviously straightforward. If we can develop products quicker, deliver them quicker, that's going to be an advantage. First mover advantage is key in strategy.
Yeah.
EPO is on this syllabus. It was on the old syllabus and it's never been asked. It's rather silly because it's to do with companies flexing prices to suit markets, sort of. Building companies, building sites can use EPO to optimize the mix of houses on a building site based on local demand, but it's not strictly procurement. So it's looking at capital procurement, sales, production capability, information. And it is about optimizing prices, stimulating demand, optimizing fulfillment, re-optimizing prices. But problems, and this is from the study guide, holding back purchases where companies appear to have constantly shifting prices. There is an incentive for customers to resist committing to paying the price initially, and the expectation this may reduce. If they know they're playing this game, people might become dissatisfied because price goes up because demand goes up, timing. So I don't like it, but it's a named bullet point on your syllabus is enterprise price optimization.
Yeah.
So you maybe think, that's a sort of 10-minute over a coffee in the morning one to just think, I won't look at anything else. I'll just nail that bullet point.
Yeah.
And I don't like it, but my notes are fairly clear. These aren't that clear. Sorry about that. That could have been slightly better. There's the definition: a systematic process of planning, integrating, coordinating, executing all dimensions of enterprise activities for the best. Oh, good grief. That's a very difficult one. Oh, because that was EPO. Outsourcing. Smiles, because we all know it. Why do we do it? What's driving it? All those things. And here's the new matrix from Barnes.
Right.
And we've got two different axes here: strategic importance versus contribution. Whereas the Carter's one, I think, was core importance and capability of supply, wasn't it? I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Can't remember.
Yeah, but I wouldn't learn that. I'd go with the new one with Barnes.
Yeah.
So just forget about there was a Carter's one. So basically, obviously, we shouldn't outsource everything. We should only, it says here, outsource things that have high contribution to operational performance and are strategically low of importance.
Yeah.
If it's highly important, and even though it doesn't contribute much, we might go for a partnership or alliance. Keep in-house, retain. If it's highly important, and get rid of, eliminate what we're doing with this project.
Right.
Why have we even got it? So there's a nice explanation in my cram notes on that, and there's a link to a little video, Eddie, on that.
Right.
But of course, it links to core competencies and capabilities, doesn't it? What's important to your company.
Yeah.
But nearly all the new SIPS books have gone with this Barnes model.
Right.
And it's not bad. It's just one thing, okay, I need to get my head around, could I write about them 4 boxes? Not yet, but I will be able to by the exam comes, because it's quite straightforward to learn.
Yeah.
So that's the study guide says reduce dependency in that bottom left, whereas the proper Barnes one says eliminate.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, but just bear that in mind.
Okay.
We might offshore with advantages, pretty obviously advantages. Disadvantages, long supply chains, culture, quality, jobs, language, standard stuff. Dealing with foreigners. Don't put that in your exams.
Get lynched.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, they would go. But pretty standard stuff, the offshoring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same as low-cost country sourcing, there are many advantages to be gained, and there's these disadvantages, which are very similar to offshoring disadvantages.
Yeah.
Exchange rate issues, reliability. Easy question if it came up.
Yeah.
Total quality management.
Okay.
Because there's quality principles on this one. It's strategic thinking integrated. So that's a view of TQM. There are 8 principles of TQM. So as long as you could talk about TQM, you don't need to necessarily have those standard answers there, but you would need to be able to just articulate what it was about. Quality tends to cost more if we don't catch it early enough, and the study guide goes down this 110-100 rule. Prevention costs being much less to catch it earlier than correcting, which is 10 times more expensive.
Right. Fairly, I get that.
It's 100 times more. So,
Yeah.
So it's trying to, I've not, quite honest, I've not heard of it, Eddie, this 110.
No,
100.
but I get it. I see what it's explaining.
Yeah, and it's one they've put in the book, so you think, well, so how do we improve the supply chain? Not sure where they got this 5-step model from. Evaluate the supply chain, assess it, select partners. What are the core competencies? Review and improve. It's a very odd cycle, that. But it's there in the study guide as an improvement cycle.
Yeah.
We might have traffic light systems, which we all know about, red, amber, green. And that was pretty much 1.2. 1.3, steepled, change, volatility. International minimum standards there at the bottom is really about labour standards and making sure that supply chain conform, no slave labour, no child labour, and all this.
Yeah.
And no buying from Leicester because they've all got some slavery there, allegedly.
Yeah.
We've known it for years, though, Leicester. It's been shocking over the years for retail. It's a lot of clothing made there.
Yeah.
And it's always had sweatshops, but
right.
Don't quote me on that in your exams.
Yeah. Dave says.
That's right. So steepled, steepled.
Yeah.
Social, technical, environmental, political, legal, ethical, demographic, obviously, race, age, income, marital status, education.
Yeah.
Change can be big change, disruptive, or it can be slow change, incremental.
Yeah.
So we can have big bang and we can have incremental.
Yeah.
Markets are said to be more volatile now, especially with COVID, aren't they? And I'm sure
Yeah.
you throw COVID into an exam, and depressions, recessions, and all this stuff. Globalization, advantages, disadvantages. Again, very similar to low-cost sourcing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nothing new there. International standards, well, we know what they are. Buyer develops a spec, seller develops a product, the standard document. You can tell the silly slides, they're from the study guide. Trade agreements, NAFTA, APEC, ASEAN, and obviously we're trying to get one with the EU.
Yeah.
So that affects tariffs, friction, border controls, and that was pretty much 1.3. There's more in the notes, of course.
Yeah.
Then we've got this sort of new stuff, models of strategic alignment, and a little bit on relationships. So alignment is exactly what it sounds, that everything's pulling the same way.
Yeah.
All the strategies are lined up. It reduces weights, eliminates conflicts, and increases stability by having alignment. Forces against alignment, historical structure of your company, personal issues, market structures, and size and complexity. That's not one of my graphics there. That's quite good, is that? Culture compatibility. So we need everything to align. Customer relationship management is exactly what it says. We need to align with the goals, consolidate data, segment customers, personalize customer interactions, and reevaluate and calibrate your strategy. Yeah. Supply relationship management, and that's showing sort of stages of collaboration. Not important models yet, we'll get on some more in the middle. Strategic alignment model, or it's called SAM in many textbooks. Very odd, this functional integration versus strategic fit, and you've got all these quadrants, which is very strange. So if you're aligned in 2 quadrants there, you're highly effective top right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes a very strange one, and that's from Henderson and all that. One that's in the study guide is the full model is this one, that talks about functional integration versus strategic integration, but this was developed to explain why IT systems needed to be integrated into the strategy of the company, so that there was functional integration and linkages with the strategy. It's honestly, and that's the same diagram, that the business strategy needs to link to the IT strategy. So this SAM model, I really dislike it, but I know I've put a clear explanation in the notes of it. I'm not sure whether I'd learn it.
Right.
So I'd really put a question mark on that one. Right, number 2, this is fairly okay. Segmentation, which everyone understands. Network supply chains, distribution systems, and the old lean agile, which I think you did it.
Yeah.
Certainly at level 5, it was a big part of improving competitiveness.
Right. Yeah.
Segmentation people get. So to segment customers, the segment needs to be distinct. It's got to be sizable and actionable. All the marketing books have that in. Customer segments, innovative solutions is a customer segment, needs differentiation. Don't really see what that's telling us. I'll be quite honest. I'll review that for next week. It's a bit nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's just say no. Forget that one. Supply segmentation. Yeah, could be commodity items, strategic, standard, key. It's a bit like Kraljek, that, isn't it? But we're looking at other high spend, other low spend. So that's one way of looking at it.
I mentioned Kraljek in my interview this morning.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, it's a classic.
Yeah.
Um, did they sort of acknowledge it or smile, thinking, yeah,
I'm not sure. I mentioned it for categorizing.
good. Yeah, I think, and the good thing is with your nearly through your studies, it shows you're a credible background knowledge, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, without that. So marketing is about the 4Ps: product, price, promotion, place, and that's what
Yeah.
they call the marketing mix. Ah, oh, right. This is we get. Gatorna is quoted widely throughout this book because that was the recommended reading.
Yeah.
And he talks about some customers want collaborative, some want efficient supply, some are dynamic, and some want innovative solutions. So we'll come back to Gatorna certainly next week with a vengeance. Product life cycles, impact supply chain strategies,
Yeah.
tiering, yeah. The 4 gaps, now that's a complicated way of saying there can be quality gaps. I think Slack has the 5 gap model, ServQual has the 5 gaps. That's a complicated way of trying to show there can be differences and quality problems. And there you've got, that's the better diagram. So that's from the study guide. Let me go to that one. So very famous theory from Fisher. So yeah, said your supply chain depends whether you've got a functional product or whether you've got an innovative product. And I've just seen a mistake on that slide there. Can you see it says functional products on both headings at the top?
Right. Yeah.
One of them should say innovative products.
Right.
So innovative is like fashion, mobile phones, etc.
Yeah.
Functional is stuff that doesn't change much. So you need a different supply chain depending whether you have a functional product or a
Yeah.
innovative product. So one wants lean and the other wants agile. So
Yeah.
the Fisher model, if I go back to that one, you can see on the top left, it's got innovative top, functional at the bottom left.
Yeah.
And at the bottom, it's got match, mismatch. So you can see,
All right. Yeah.
efficient processes versus responsive. So basically, it's just basically saying some products need lean, some need agile, and
Yeah.
it depends on whether it's a functional or innovative market requirement.
Yeah.
So you're matching your supply chain up to the products. And that Fisher's well known. I'm just a bit miffed that slide's wrong, but I will get that changed. And you can see there it gives you some examples of functional products versus innovative products. Product life cycles, functional can be quite long. Innovative products can be quite short.
Yeah.
Product variety is different. Average stock out rates different. So there's some major differences for your supply chain and your distribution channels.
Yeah.
So that's a nice distinction with Fisher. Christopher and Towell, don't learn all these, talk about volatile and stable demand versus special products and standard products. Now that's very similar to functional products and innovative products, but on the top axis they've got demand. Is demand stable? So that's just another way of looking at it. And we mentioned earlier, Gatorna mentions these 4 buying behaviours, which we'll come back to, honestly. But they're the 4 behaviours: collaborative, transactional, dynamic, and innovative, which are these 4 on that slide there.
Yeah.
But we'll do a sort of separate 15 minutes on Gatorna because it's a very confusing theory. 2.2 then, nothing too much here. Supply chains. Value stream mapping. Identifying the waste and the delays.
Yeah.
So mapping supply chains is always key in an exam question. It identifies waste, risk. If you can't map it, you don't know what's happening. So that's value stream mapping. Network sourcing, maybe having 2 sources of supply, but single sourcing. So you might buy plastic components from 2 suppliers, but each could produce the other ones, and you'll single source each individual item, but you might have 2 suppliers. Tiering, again, you've done many times.
Yeah.
Upstream, downstream, value chain, we've seen today already.
Yeah.
Network optimization models can be used to decide layouts of networks. Now that isn't that clear how it's used there, so I'll maybe come on. I'll just make a note to myself to do the noms again there. Reverse logistics.
Yeah.
Closed loop supply chain. Cradle to grave, recycling, green. It's to do with being green. And
Yeah.
it's driven by legislation. You can see the reuse, repair, waste hierarchy. So reverse logistics is huge in supply chain management now.
Yeah.
And the concept's fairly straightforward, isn't it? It's whether you have a different logistics company to take stuff back, which a lot do, or whether they use third-party reverse logistics people. So there's a lot of issues there. The study, License and Farrington says, look, you're going to have links to companies, and there are 4 types of links, say License and Farrington. Can you see NISG, not in study guide? And you can have managed process links, which are to tier 1, where you actually have really close managed processes. You can have some links with suppliers where you're just monitoring process, and you can have not managed process further down the supply chain.
Right.
And you can have non-member process links further back. And the focal company like Ford are in the middle there. Now that diagram links to that from the study guide. The study guide tries to confuse people, showing them 4 boxes, which mean nothing. So that's the picture in the study guide, but that's the proper diagram from License and Farrington.
Right.
Just explaining, okay, we understand supply chain, but what sort of relationships and linkages might you have in that supply chain? Obviously, with tier 1, you're in bed with them, close relationships, managed, but you're further back. There could be non-member links and not managed links. So it's just showing a bit more terminology. Gaps, supplier involvement gap, the gap between our view of our own requirements and our view of our supplier's performance. So these are the quality gaps again. What you think you've made to what the customer thinks he's got, to what you thought you needed, all that stuff. So they're the 4 gaps. We've had the reverse logistics. Yeah, they hate or like this distribution stuff, channel design, logistics, distribution centers. One of the textbooks, I haven't got it here, shows this diagram of how to design your network, all the issues. You could never learn all that. It does give you a few issues that you have to decide. You're starting off with your strategy, then you're looking at your regional configuration, what sites you're going to use and what locations. And there's some questions that feed in there. So do you sell directly? Do you sell through retailers or wholesalers? So their channel. So how many distributors, how many tiers, where do you stock it? Who do you sell to? So channel. And you've got this new term, omni-channel nowadays, haven't you? Where you've got online and bricks and mortar and all this. They try and link up. Channel design paradigms. Recognise the need for channel design, coordinate, specify, develop, evaluate, choose, select. Well, yeah. E-commerce. And we've got a term there, cannibalization, which hopefully we'll look at in a second. Yeah, most of the other terms there you'll recognise.
Yeah.
And cannibal, let's just check I've got my cannibalization there. Wonderful, it's not there. It's where one offer impacts on another offer. So you can, you've got to be careful. Doing one thing can impact something else.
Right.
We'll come back onto that, but it's just a thought. Physical network configuration, nothing there. Transport challenges, driver shortages. Yeah. Location of centres. Well, you could write a dissertation on that.
Yeah.
Depends on the service level you want, the type of product you've got, the environment. Yeah, it's kitchen sink. So they're all factors that impact on the decision. So do you have local, regional? There can be local, regional and global supply chains. Yeah, that's fairly obvious. And then we're on to the nice stuff, I think, lean and agile.
Yeah.
What is lean? Mapping, value stream, lining up waste, creating flow, pull, not push, eliminating waste. That's how we implement lean. Identify the value, map, create flow, establish pull, seek perfection. So you do need that if you're not got that drilled in yet. And you know what's going to come up in a minute. Tim Wood,
Yeah.
the 7 ways. Yeah, I'll go back a slide now. So benefits of lean: closer collaboration, better quality, shorter stocks, you name it, fewer defects. And by mapping the supply chain, we can identify the waste, and the waste can be all that lot. So that's a nice filler, and it's a lean technique.
Yeah.
How do we achieve agility? That's slightly different. Streamlining the physical flow, adaptability and responding, exploring potential of 4PL maybe, or pipeline integrators to coordinate agile response. So 4-party logistics people sort of coordinate all the other logistics people for you and run your distribution and supply, measuring performance. So agility different. Good revision slide, difference between lean and agile.
Yeah.
And some of that becoming, but basically, obviously, agile is responsive. You need to have that flexibility to react to unstable demand, changing demand.
Yeah.
Whereas lean's all about JIT, isn't it, and synchronizing your flows.
Yeah.
And it looks like I've repeated. No, that's my slide. It's a similar one. Agile versus lean. But there's a little more there. It impacts on supply selection. It impacts on supply relationships. And it impacts maybe how you measure performance. So that's worth maybe just, even though it looks obvious, it's worth digesting. And there's similar to the Fisher one we looked at earlier and the other one. How do you decide which? Well, it depends how volatile the supply environment is. And is the demand stable? We don't need legal on this one. So you've got lean or agile, top left, bottom right. Another way of looking at it is lead time versus demand. So can you see slightly different axis, but the same result?
Yeah.
Lean versus agile. By lead time versus demand certainty, that's a different one. That's from Christopher and Peck. You don't need all these, but there's 3 there that give you the basic of how you would decide whether you wanted lean or continuous replenishment. Push versus pull, MRP versus lean, really.
Yeah.
Depends if you can pull stuff through, depends if your demand's stable, it depends on your changeover times, etc. Pull, make what's needed when we need it. How do we balance it? Well, better forecasting, better production methods, closer relationships. It's very difficult to match demand and supply.
Yeah.
So demand planning accuracy is important. And obviously the further we go out on the planning horizon, the more difficult it is to be exact. And you've got that accuracy there going from right through to several months to a year for sourcing packaging. License and Fountain, even though it's not recommended book, come up with what determines demand, inventory policy, service level required, market conditions, supply side factors, all impact there. Again, promotions or isma cannibalization, bringing forward future sales of the promoted product customer buys now. Low demand could lead to the lower demand for substitute or competing products within the same product range, and it might lead to higher demand for complementing. So basically, there's a price to be paid. It could be positive or negative by having a promotion.
Yeah.
But obviously, you need to plan promotions in, but need to be aware of their impact. Other causal events, competitor activity, discontinuation of products, prices falling. Yeah, these are all causal events, so it is spelt right, causal, that impact on demand. COVID. How do we improve accuracy in demand planning? Not in, that's a bit strange. I've put page 162, then I've said not in the study guide. But basically we can use statistical forecasting, manage promotions, demand integration, try and reduce variability. So there are various ways of improving demand planning. Plan, pilot, integrate, identify, yeah. Technology, RFID, all that sort of stuff, barcoding, predictive analytics, they're the big thing in purchasing at the moment. And then we've got barcoding, RFD, other technologies. Pretty straightforward stuff. Active and passive tags. Of course, active have a transmitter and a battery. Benefits of RFID. It's quicker, faster. You don't need to cite. Extensively used. Automatic identification, AIDC. And that's, and that's pretty much 1.2. It's a very broad. I'm just going to stop recording.